Right, so this is from Makeover Monday, and this is the Great Bicycle Boom of 2020. I thought this was so much fun. I love getting to play with different data sets. The idea behind this was that during the pandemic in America, people were more likely to use their bicycles than they were their cars or even walking. It was just more that people got outside and actually did things. So I'm going to go over what I did in the back before we look at this gorgeous chart. So we had, as you can see, a whole bunch of tables within our Excel file. I ended up using this total count data multiple times, and I'll show you why. When we looked at the bike counts, we had a time frame, a week of, and then we just had the counts here. And this was helpful, but at the end of the day, I wanted to look at it by year and by week of. So just seeing this 2019 count, I didn't find the most helpful for me. This counter location, I ended up not really using. A lot of these didn't have any items within them for a daily average, so I felt like it wasn't necessarily fair to use. I think there's, 43 of these, and almost like I think 30% didn't have anything in them. And so I know I ended up not using that table. The methodology was a pretty classic. I wrote a lot of things in Excel, and it was really hard to end up reading and pulling over. So I didn't use a lot of this either. I did read these, right? So I know that, this is from RTC's Eco Counter. You can see in my report, I do show the data source. So I did read these, but it, wasn't the most conducive to actually use from the methodology table. Pedestrian count was kind of the same as the bike counts. It had the time frame and the week, but really wasn't something that I felt was the most helpful. So what I did was I used this total count data. And so what this was, I'll promote the headers. It had the year in it, which was so helpful. And then it had the time frame. It had the number of counters. There were 31 people counting, and how many counts they had of this number, how many were pedestrians, and then how many were bikes. So, I went through and changed the type, right? Want to make sure these were whole numbers, and I removed all of these excess columns for whatever reason. So we're here, and I removed any blank rows just in case. So what I did was I pivoted. This one I called the counts table. I pivoted by the counts here. So as you can see, I used the year column and then pivoted. So once we did that, we have, our time frame still there, but now I can see the counts for 2019 and 2020. And this just made it a lot easier for me to compare all the data and be able to make charts when they were all separated out. And I had to go through and say, if this date is in 1/1/2019, then 2019, it just became a lot of extra work, and I found that this was the easiest. So I removed these extra columns, so it went down to just counts. So our time frame, our week, and then the counts. I added a conditional column to sort these. So if you were week 1, you had a 1, week 2, you were a 2, et cetera, et cetera. We changed the type there, and then we added one more conditional column for weeks, because that was something that I didn't have that was actually correct. So what I did here, this was gross, but what I wanted to do for my actual axis was do the weeks in spans of 5, because trying to put everything, all the weeks in there was becoming really confusing, and it was kind of muddying up my chart. So, if the sort is less than or equal to 5, we have week 5, and we just did that through week 50, because that's when everything ended, and we made this text. So I did this for pedestrians and bikes as well. I had the same essential thing. I pivoted by year and then pedestrians for this one. And then I added a conditional column as well to sort. And then I changed the type. I'm only using counts as its axis. So I didn't need to do that here. And then I did the exact same thing for bikes. So this was relatively pretty simple. And so once I had this data, I have my axis here in 5s, and then, but if you hover over, you can still see it in the tooltip. But this way, it was a little bit easier to be able to view where we only had a y-axis on each side. And I did keep them the same. I personally have a pet peeve when people have, this one at 250. So, the data is easier to view, but it's a little bit different. So I want to keep everything as equal as possible. I ended up picking this type of chart because I felt like it just showed the differences so much better. You can see this huge dip here in 2019. I'm sure it was like freezing cold for pedestrians, but I just felt like it was easier to view. And that's just a personal preference here. But as you can tell, I grouped these. That's why it's a little wonky. But what I did was I added a shape on, because you can kind of tell around this time period, around week, 11 through, 16, which is around March, you can see that that's when the pandemic really picked up. And that's when you see this huge boom in number of counts. And then you can see pedestrians and bikes going up. You can kind of see the bikes continue through summer, and then same thing with pedestrians, but it actually seemed like 2019 had a really big bump for pedestrians as well. So I felt like this time period was really what we wanted to highlight here. And then I added, bike use change, and that was really just using that difference between 2019 and 2020 that had already been given to me, and I put it in percentage format. And then same thing with pedestrian use change. But this one was really fun. I felt like it was a nice way to kind of showcase something new and different. I love new data sets, and I felt that this was the cleanest way to do it, making 3 charts and then grouping them together. So we have the legend from the top chart for every single one, and then the only real differentiation is the y-axis title. So we know this is bikes, this is pedestrians, and this is counts. But yeah, this was really fun. I'll definitely continue doing these. Let me know if you have any other ideas. I'd love to hear them.